Hello and welcome back, and today I'm talking about the recent headlines that the London Stock Exchange is considering a 24-hour day. Now, there are pros and cons to this, which I'm going to dig into within this video, but there's one thing that I think a lot of people are overlooking, and that is the hidden gender debate behind these potential changes. So let's unpack what this move could mean and whether it might hurt or help progress within the overall financial sector. So the London Stock Exchange currently opens at the bright and early time of 8 a.m. and closes at 4:30 p.m. If we compare this to other major global stock markets such as the New York Stock Exchange, they open at 9:30 and close at 4. Then there is Tokyo and Shanghai. They're pretty similar. Tokyo opens at 9, closes at 3 with some sort of break in the middle. Shanghai opens at 9:30 and closes at 3. Somewhat more sociable, some might say, than the 8 a.m. start than what we see in London. But crucially, the need and the move towards this shift is being driven by the likes of crypto markets, which don't have open and close times, but rather can trade 24 hours a day. So the debate has therefore been weighed in by the London Stock Exchange that they are considering a 24-hour opening day. Now, at the moment, nothing is confirmed. This is not happening. It's just been mooted as a potential. There are some reasons behind this. So firstly, as I say, crypto, for example, is open to be traded 24 hours a day. There are some US stock markets that have moved towards a longer trading day as well. Some of that is to do with the fact that the US is spanning various different time zones, but some of it is also to do with competitiveness and trying to keep up with an ever more digital world where, for example, you can trade crypto at all hours of the day. The London Stock Exchange has also seen a bit of a tough time over the last few years. There has been a slowing in companies looking to do their IPO, so initial public offering, on the London Stock Exchange, and some have shied away from, for example, a secondary listing, or indeed have even moved away from the London Stock Exchange. This hurts overall trading volumes, it hurts the reputation of London as a city, but it can also hurt overall investment prospects for the UK, the London Stock Exchange, and the wider economy as well. So why would the London Stock Exchange want to open for longer? Well, of course, by opening for longer, they may be able to boost some of the attractiveness of the stock exchange. If they're open all times of day, then this could mean more investors are able and willing to flock into various different stocks that are listed and available. This might also help to match the likes of crypto and derivative markets and also become more globally competitive with other markets that are moving in similar directions. And some of this could help with the overall modernisation of the London Stock Exchange. One of the criticisms is also that those investors and companies that are listing face really high barriers to entry with the likes of stringent regulations that are in place in London and in the city. But it is still only talk. As I say, it's not happened yet, and there's still a lot of factors to consider. This could well be something that costs an awful lot of money to implement. If you think that just employing people overnight, for one, is only one stage of the process. There's also got to be all of the tech maneuver to allow for markets to be open for that period of time. There's also not got to be just the traders on their desks, so the individuals that are buying and selling the stocks on the stock exchange, but also the whole team that work behind them, from legal to compliance to administration and so on and so on. This could also make it more difficult for regulators, and as somebody who has worked in financial services, the regulators aren't necessarily the speediest to move. This could be something that is quite difficult to manage and monitor, and they might not be super quick to accept. It could also cause some problems with volatility. Now, the opening and closing of the stock markets is, believe it or not, done for a reason. Often, for example, companies that are prone to volatility will make announcements outside of trading hours. And some of this is to try and reduce overall volatility in their stock price, because investors can't react immediately. They have to either wait until the next morning when stock markets open, or indeed after the weekend if they do it, for example, on a Friday night, because stock markets aren't at the moment in the UK open on a Saturday or a Sunday. And as a result, if we start to see 24-hour trading, this could mean that some of those things that are in place to try and protect investors get removed. But there are also peak and lull times within the trading day and indeed even the year. So what's often seen on the London Stock Exchange is that there is a really big load of action first thing in the morning, probably as everyone wakes up and's got their breakfast in them, coffees ready to go. There's a bit of a lull in the afternoon, and then it kicks off again just before close as people make various different changes and close out their positions. What we see, for example, when we get to Christmas is the so-called Santa rally. There's a bit of a flurry of action as traditionally traders seek to close their books before they go on holiday, and the same happens again in August. So there's various different times of years that are really tied into the overall times of the market too. Now, some of these changes, the things that I'm mentioning, the Santa rally, the August change, the slowdown that we see might not be such a bad thing, but they're all factors for the likes of regulators and us as investors to consider if the stock market does become 24-hour. But here's the part that I think a lot of the narrative of these pros and cons that are very related to the overall stock market and investments as we know it are overlooking. It's the hidden conversation around gender. So as it stands, the vast majority of traders are male. In fact, stats that I can find show that around 9% of UK algo traders are women. There are other women that play a role within the overall stock market opening time, so be it that they work within fund houses, they work within other regulated roles, but you get the idea. The trading floor is still firmly dominated by men. Now, of course, there are so many reasons behind that, and I could talk about them until the cows come home. I could keep going on about it for hours, but I don't want to do that in today's video because I'm focusing on the gender debate behind these opening hours of the stock exchange. Now, think about the London Stock Exchange opening time. It's 8 a.m. and it closes at 4:30. If you factor in some sort of commute that is needed to get into the place of work whereby you might be trading and operating on the London Stock Exchange, that's a pretty early start. It's not necessarily super family friendly, and it's certainly not conducive to more flexible working schedules that often favour having more women in the workforce. I think it would be fair to say that it's not really a secret that on many trading floors and within these more regulated roles, there is very much a finance mentality of long hours, always on culture, and early starts and late finishes. As I say, this isn't necessarily super conducive to, for example, flexible working or women potentially having families, other child caring responsibilities as well. Now, of course, men in those positions may also have families and childcare responsibilities. However, what we see is that traditionally they fall to women, and this can prove to be a barrier to entry to more women entering the industry, which is really echoed within the stats that around 9% of algo traders in the UK are women. So could these 24-hour shifts actually make things a little bit more flexible? Maybe it would mean that people could have, for example, a later start, could facilitate, for example, the school drop-off. Maybe it would mean that certain shift patterns could be shortened. It could mean that some individuals may be able to work more friendly hours because there's not that need to be there from the beginning until the end, or indeed before and then after, because there would always be a rolling rotation of people. This could prove a little bit more appealing to some individuals, and it could potentially mean that those with responsibilities outside of some of those hours that are currently limiting from the London Stock Exchange are able to be that little bit more flexible? Or does it just actually mean that we lead ourselves into even more burnout, and the need for 24 hours on always results in teams that are still relatively unequal in terms of their gender balances? It's still an area of work that is not super appealing to those that are looking for some level of flexible working, traditionally more female, based on the fact that they have caring responsibilities and the like. And in fact, it could just exacerbate a lot of the problems that already exist within the industry. As I say, be it from burnout, be it from mental toll that is taken on some of those jobs that traditionally have those really early starts and late finishes. And that goes for both men and women, of course, within those roles. A move like this could, in my opinion, work if companies do take the chance to think about various different changes. Maybe even just the talk of a 24-hour day will start to see the move towards things like job sharing, perhaps things like more flexible hours around that trading day, things like shorter shifts within it, and actual moves towards more inclusion and driving more women into the trading sector. I think often within these things it becomes an ironic, or not very ironic, but a case of a vicious cycle, that the less women that there are in the rooms to try and influence some of the decisions, the less that some of these thoughts get voiced, and so things just remain the same on that, for example, 8 a.m. start and 4:30 a.m. The idea of shortening the day has also been mooted. In fact, it was back in COVID that there was a petition to try and shorten it to a 9 a.m. start, which would echo some other major stock markets across the globe. As I've mentioned, both Shanghai and Tokyo don't start till 9 or 9:30, and same for the New York Stock Exchange as well. But maybe we need some level of bigger thinking on this, because there's a hidden gender debate that I cannot ignore here from just the sheer numbers of women on the stock exchange, be it very, very small, as traders in this example. Of course, I could go into, and I will go into, the stats in other videos on how this looks across the rest of the financial industry as well. I'm focusing on really quite a small niche here of just female algo traders, and that is, as I say, a small niche. Because it's not just about women, it's also about men not facing burnout within these jobs, and also potentially being able to take things like paternity leave and seeing a greater work-life balance as well, and making the overall role more appealing. If markets really do want to modernise, I think they need to look beyond just those liquidity and regulatory requirements. I'm on the fence as to whether I think this 24-hour things could make things better or worse for some of those splits when it comes to gender equality and when it comes to other considerations such as mental health and burnout. But if finance does want to make itself more appealing, it needs to rethink how it works, not just when it works. So I'd love to know there. As I say, I'm on the fence, but what do you think? Because there is lots of layers to this debate, and I focused on one angle there that I really saw as something that was being a little bit overlooked. It is that gender angle and that gender debate that I think really could influence the overall outcome if it were considered. But drop me a comment if you're liking these videos. Do like and subscribe, and as I say, there'll be more videos on this kind of topic to come.